All right, we call this meeting to order. The Halfmoon Township Board of Supervisors, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. All right, this is being recorded live for CNET's YouTube channel. Do we have any public comments on anything other than the zoning hearing? Yes, sir.
Cliff Neal, and I am representing Port Matilda EMS Board of Directors. I just want to take a minute to update you guys on some rather exciting news. We have been working diligently for over 2.5 years to secure grants to replace a lot of our very outdated equipment. And we just received our second new ambulance back up. It's purely covered by grant money. And thank you very much to Halfmoon Township support. In the next 2 weeks, we're receiving a new wheelchair van that is also covered 100% by grants that we've worked on. And Amy was kind enough to help us with the LSA grant. And I just wanted to extend my thank you to the township for supporting that. That's all I have.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Diane Sticovey from Loveville Road, or not really, I live off
Up on the hill.
Windy Pines Lane, but might as well say Loveville Road. Two things, the watershed cleanup day for Clearwater is going to be the 12th of April this year. It's not going to be during Earth Day week. It'll be the 12th of and so we'll be rallying people to do that. The other one is that Centered Outdoors has, and I'll leave these with Amy to put up on a bulletin board. Centered Outdoors has some fresh air walks, junior naturalist play days, winter wellness activities, full moon walks, and a speaker series. So I'll leave these with Amy, and those are the two things that I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Hearing none. First up, approval of the minutes for January 6, 2025 Board of Supervisors organizational meeting. Do I hear a motion to approve those minutes? A motion. How about a second? Moved and seconded. Any questions by the board? Call for the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Next up, minutes of January 6, 2025 of the regular supervisors meeting. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion by the board? Call for the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Consent agenda.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion that the appointments to the various boards be taken off the consent agenda and addressed separately.
Okay. Do I hear a second from anybody? I'll second it for discussion purposes. Would you like to make your case?
I think there's some things on a consent agenda to me means things that have to happen. Case in point, ratifications of bill lists, approval of the sale of the backhoe. Things like that we know we're going to do, have to do.
Okay.
This appointments to boards and committees and commissions are arbitrary. They require a vote, and we may not all agree on the vote. So this would go in generally speaking, anything that's not an automatic something that we have to do should not be on a consent agenda. That's just my opinion. So that's why I made the motion.
Okay. So you're asking to remove the committee appointments from the consent agenda and
That's it.
vote on them separately?
Yep,
That's your motion?
that's my motion.
Okay, and I second it. All right, does anybody else have anything to add on that? Anyone? All right, we'll call for the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, 2 to 3. Motion fails. All right, next up, consent agenda. This is approving the bills list of 01/01/2025 to 01/07/2025. General fund in the amount of $14,083.51. Capital reserve fund in the amount of $118,300. Ratification of the bills list 01/08/25 to 01/21/25. Following funds: general fund in the amount of $7,827.07. State Highway Liquid Fuels Fund, $9,127.49. This is approve the sale of the 1987 John Deere 210C backhoe on municipal bid. Approve the appointment of Ms. Hartle to serve on the alternate on the Upper Bald Eagle Halfmoon Cog. To appoint Ms. Perkins to serve as an alternate to the Open Space Preservation Board. And appoint Ms. Perkins to serve as an alternate on the Center Region Cog Facilities Committee. Do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda? Do I hear a second? Moving second. Any discussion by the board? Call for the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Okay. Next up, support letter for Upper Half Moon Water Company from SRBC, or for SRBC Consumption Use Mitigation Grant. Mr. Pizzoni. Just give the public a little rundown, I guess.
My name is Ben Pizzoni, and I'm with the Upper Half Moon Water Company. We serve approximately 60–70% of the population of Halfmoon Township, and we're in the process of applying for an SRBC grant to mainly replace our old outdated mechanical meters with new digital ones with the capability of transmitting the reading. So currently, we actually send out postcards quarterly, and the customer or the members will record what their meter is and send that back with their payment. In the future, if we do get this grant, then we'll be able just to drive around and just pull in all the meter readings. Another part of the project is to purchase some acoustical devices that we would put out in the distribution system to get like a baseline of the noise from the water going through our pipes. So then if there's a leak, we can at least fairly quickly isolate it to a certain area anyway. And we're just hoping to get a letter of support from the township for this.
Not to do with your letter directly, but how many thousand gallons a month or year do you think you're losing in the lines, or do you not have any idea?
I have a decent idea. Last year, in 2023, we lost approximately 19%, 19.5%, and we pumped close to 50 million gallons a year, 40-some.
Well, this would be really beneficial to the water company. That's what I thought. Don't feel embarrassed. I think Warriors Mark was losing more than that. So.
Well, we're better than, well, I don't want to say the
Yeah. Ron first and then Ms. Perkins.
What other capabilities does the digital meters have in terms of, do they control metering of the water itself, or do they just read? It's just a reader.
It's a
And
smart
a transmitter.
reader. I'm sorry.
And a transmitter, a smart.
Yeah, it's a smart reader. It will tell us if there's usage in the night for an extended period of time.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, that would be a toilet, constantly filling up and dumping down. I'm sure it does a lot more, but to be honest, I haven't seen one or put my hands on one yet.
Does the grant cover? So it covers other things too, like you're talking about sensors that you would place in certain areas of the township to basically observe the flow of water through the pipes.
They're not, they're
acoustically
acoustic.
speaking.
So we would put, I think it's a package of 10 or 12 of these devices, and you put them down, not curb boxes, that's on each property, but on the valves, the main valve, curb boxes, or valve boxes.
Yeah.
So then we can isolate an area fairly quickly then.
Okay, and then the last question I have is, 19% of the total water pump, that's a lot of water. And
It is.
what, do you guys have a plan to replace some of those old lines? I know you have some lines, you had talked about it at the public meeting, about the increase in rates. You had talked about, was it blue spruce and red pine and hemlock having what they used at one time, they used conduit for water lines, like
Yeah.
electrical conduit.
1.25 inch
Yeah.
electrical conduit.
So is your plan to, over time, to make capital improvements to remove the loss, or, to reduce the loss, or is that your plan?
Of course, we have plans in the future of replacing 1.25 inch mains, but that's typically not our problem area. We go out in the middle of the night, and I
Right.
can shut down sections,
Mhm.
and everything coming from the tank, I have go through a meter pit that I can access with my phone. So then I'll shut down half of the town and see what
Right.
happens to the flow. About a month ago, we did this, and we found a pretty large leak. It was almost 20 gallons a minute on Randall Road, but on the surface, you could hardly tell. It finally started to surface,
Right.
but some leaks in some areas just don't surface. But yeah, we have plans on replacing, almost every year, we invest money back in. The last couple years, we have, every 30 years, for one of our wells, we need to go through a re-permitting process. And that's the full-blown permit. And that's, I don't know, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 there. And we just got notice that in 2029, I think it is, we have to go through that exact same process for our second large well.
Okay.
So we're a non-profit organization. Fortunately, we have enough customer base to help support these projects.
Okay.
The SRBC project that we're trying to get a grant money for is approximately $300,000, and we have to, it's a 20% matching fund.
So does that save you money in the long run by having the smart meters?
I'm sorry?
Does it save you operational costs by having the smart meters, if you get them installed?
It'll save headaches from the customer's part, getting meter readings in the middle of the winter, and some homes have meter pits. It will save a lot of headaches on the water company part, because we rely on our customer to give a meter reading, and of course 10-15% of the customers frequently don't read the meters. So then we have to call, or they'd send someone out to try to get a meter reading. So it will save some costs.
Okay.
Ms. Perkins?
Actually, he answered my
Okay,
question, so I'm
good.
good.
Anybody have anything else? All right, do I hear a motion to approve the letter for the grant application?
So moved.
Do I hear a second? Move to second. Any discussion by the board?
Actually, I have one more question for Ben, if that's okay,
Yep.
Mr. Chair. Are you expecting this grant then would cover, how much of the cost of the meters? All of it, or?
It covers 80%.
80%, okay.
20% of whatever we spend has to come from us.
Okay,
I mean, out of this, the monies that SRBC spends, we have to pay 20%.
okay. That's what you were alluding to earlier.
Yeah.
Okay.
Call for the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion approved. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Good to see you again.
Good seeing you.
All right, next up is a proposed change to the R1 zone, zoning ordinance. And Corey, you want to give a rundown for the general public?
Sure, this is for the A1 actually, and the biggest change we had here was we have the rural preservation developments, and all of that information was in the SALDO. So we took all of that RPD development uses and restrictions and things like that and put it into the A1 zone.
Saldo subdivision and land development ordinance.
Yes,
Okay, just
sorry.
For those who don't
I
know.
don't know. So we did that. We did, just for clarity purposes, we moved everything into a table, which I think you guys have previously seen too, which just has the setbacks for ease of use for staff and for development purposes. We removed the limited commercial allowances that were in there, you know, because we have our own commercial district for that kind of stuff. And that was the biggest changes we had. Most of it was just a clarity type of a situation.
I have a question.
Sure.
Is the half-acre minimum lot size still in there?
The half-acre minimum lot size is for the RPD, not for the A1. So for an RPD development, it would be allowed.
I just want to let people know, we're going to start the hearing, but we're just doing some rundown questions, because otherwise the public will have no idea what we're talking about or why.
Sure.
So, I do have a couple questions. But
Sure.
I'll let the rest of the people go, and then I'll hit you up for it. Ron, you got anything else to?
No.
Patty? Tammy? Chuck? Okay, I have a couple questions here. One, explain to me how the yield plan works on this. So I see half acre is a minimum lot size, but what goes on to kick you into that half acre in the
So
ordinance?
when you have a parent tract in the A1, they're allowed 4 lot exemptions. So 4, however many size lots they want to make, as long as they're bigger than the 1 acre, they can do that as a conventional development. Once you hit that 4th, you get thrown into the RPD, which is a conservation development. So for that.
Because this is in the agricultural zone.
Because it's in the agricultural zone. And as part of that RPD development, we require 50% of the tract to be put into open land that cannot be future developed. So because of that, we allow for the smaller lot size to allow then for the person to have the same developmental lot rights that they would have in a conventional development. But they still have to meet all of the same setbacks, the separation distances for the wells and septic. So they still have to go through all of the other parts of development, but they are able to have a smaller lot size if they can do that.
So then, I got another question. You had mentioned the smaller lot. Is that the half-acre lot you're referring to?
Yes.
So, I'll never understand why we would apply a half-acre minimum lot size. I still don't get that. I know you've explained it before, but I still don't get it.
Well, that's because again, this is a conservation development. So typically conservation developments they have smaller lot sizes because you're required to give a portion or donate, I shouldn't say give, you're required to lose development rights on a portion of the property. So for the RPD, you're required to give 50% of the open tract to remain open land.
Okay, so now, but how could that possibly legally affect otherwise in non-agricultural land or residential development, for example, we have minimum lot size of 1 acre, right? Could that possibly impact our restriction to 1 acre lot sizes?
Not in a different zone.
Okay.
It applies specifically to the RPD developments in A1.
Okay.
But only A1.
That's the only place we allow RPD developments is in A1.
Yeah. Okay.
Anybody else on
Is
that?
half acre an issue for on-lot septic?
It could be. I mean, it would be, but again,
That would still be required.
it could, yeah, I mean, there's ways you could do that, but they would still be required to have a primary and a backup septic. And
On
well
that lot.
On that half acre lot.
Right.
It's just puzzling to me. I understand you know more about this than I do, but I just see a conflict sort of in my mind about.
I guess the purpose is to have the development concentrated so there's more open space around.
Yes, I mean, again, think about it as a 100-acre lot.
Yeah.
If that 100-acre lot was going to be if you had to go through RPD standards for that, 50 acres would have to stay in open land. Whereas if you just went through conventional development, you could have 100 lots there, theoretically, as long as it met the distances there. So we're still allowing them potentially to put the 100 lots on that 50 acres if you still have the same developable rights.
We're kind of fighting a battle. We have been fighting a battle for a number of years about this kind of thing, but I'm always concerned about any speech, any reference to half-acre lot size as a minimum lot size when we're trying to defend 1 acre lots otherwise. Because, if things go to court, a courtroom, everything can change in a courtroom. A judge can rule, well, hey, they're allowed to have a half an acre lot on those, and those properties. Why not allow half acre lots in this residential area? And now we're setting a precedent. Let's say the court sets a precedent that half acre lots are okay. You know, are we kind of, in other words, are we feeding the potential for that? Or
I don't
you
believe,
think we
I
are?
don't believe we are, because
Okay.
again, if for the residential district, that, again, is a completely different zone.
Yeah.
So with this, and again, we did have the solicitor look over this for the legalities of things like that, so,
Yeah.
So we already
It's
have
the same
something like
amount
that,
of-
right?
oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
So we already have that, right?
That's already in there right
Yeah.
now. Yep, but right now.
What is
we-
in there right now?
The half.
Well, no, we don't, the half acre lots, we
We have
still,
the 50% open.
we have the 50% open.
Yes, that
land.
is.
That's
Okay.
in there right now.
But the half acre is
It,
not.
right, that was more or less, because they added a yield plan to this too, that was the planning commission's. So for the yield plan, to make it a little more convoluted, but we allow for, that's a conceptual plan that we're gonna require for RPD developments. That shows, you have to show the maximum build out you could have on that parcel, in a concept form. But you also have to show your environmentally sensitive areas, your steep slopes, so you would automatically see the areas that would not be developable in the future, if that helps.
And those can be part of the 50%,
Yes, yep.
Which means you're
as long as it's not slopes or something like that, that's more than 25%, right?
Yes, yep.
Right, okay. So essentially, this is allowing the same density, just a higher concentration because they're half acre lots, not
Mhm.
1 acre lots.
Mhm.
So really, that's the difference.
That's the
Increased concentration. So is there a reason why we wouldn't do the acre lots and decrease the concentration?
You,
Decrease the density, I guess.
you could, I mean, I think you could make your lot restrictions anything or lot sizes anything that you would want. I think because this is considered to be a conservation, you know, you're taking away some of the land that can be developed. This is kind of like the compromise back for that. And again, they still have to, I'm not saying they're gonna be able to get the same amount of developable lots. They still have to meet all of our other,
Because they still have to have 1 and 2 locations for
Mhm.
septic.
they have to have 2 locations for septic, they'd have to have their well location. They would have setbacks on that, they would have, you know, their neighbors would have issues with that could potentially too, for the septic, you know, if your neighbor's lot's here with a septic, you can't have your well close to their septic. So there's limiting factors with
Right,
that as
right,
well.
right. So if they determine that there is undevelopable lots, can they swap that, those undevelopable lots for part of their 50%?
Well, the 50% would have to be, they have to show that on the plan, the actual plan. The yield plan itself is just conceptual. So before, like, you would actually have an open land sheet in the plan that would
They
show where it
designate that
is, that
ahead
would
of
be,
time.
yep, that would be
So-
dedicated.
So if they find undevelopable lots, that just.
They would just make some bigger.
It just
Some
stays
would,
open.
some
Yeah.
would be larger
That
than a
would-
half acre
that
to
gets
accommodate.
counted.
Yes.
I think,
Okay.
Tammy, what you're saying is not undevelopable lots, but undevelopable property. You know, if it has a sinkhole, you're not allowed within 100 feet of it.
Right, or a half an acre lot where they can't
If
find
it
1 and
doesn't
2
park.
locations for septic.
Yeah, they would just make lots
They
They
bigger.
would have to be,
Bigger.
it would have to be a bigger lot.
Bigger lot,
Yep.
okay.
But the lot can't be created unless they do have an area for septic, so that it stops it before it even starts.
Right, okay.
My other couple questions,
Just looking for any loopholes.
No,
that's all.
that's
Well,
fine.
that 1/2 acre's gonna haunt me forever.
But that's just a minimum. They're probably end up being a little.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, that's just.
one of the things that says any parcel that consists of 10 acres or more as of March 11th, 1999 will be entitled to subdivide 4 lots on the parent tract without having to comply with RPD standards. Why March 11th, 1999?
Because that's when the RPD ordinance was enacted.
Right, but at the time, you were allowed to do it no matter what. Everybody was entitled to their 4 lots if they had so much ground.
That isn't something we amended, it was in the original.
Yeah, that was there from the.
Okay, so that's a carry.
That's a
That's a
carryover.
carryover.
Well, I didn't know where the date came from,
Yeah.
that's why I was
Sure.
trying to figure it out. The other question I had is in the bulk area regulations on table 25513B, and it gives, you've got maximum coverage for lots less than 5 acres, over 5 acres, minimum lot widths, and then it comes down to front setback, 50 feet from front property line, and you got State Route 550, 60 feet from the front yard property line, sides 50 feet, ag structures 100 feet, and the rear 75 feet from the rear property line. And maybe this is a planner thing, but I don't get why the planners always like jack up the rear setback lines. I mean, when you're talking about somebody has 100 acres of ground, who really cares? Because, or at least even 10 acres. I mean, is there a reason why they always do that? I'm more of into the, just make it all 50 and be done with it.
I think that's an option.
Okay,
50-foot setback.
yeah, which is what most of this is. But if
What is
you,
it now?
Current ones right now are
15 and 20.
15 and 20 for, well, 15 for single-family dwelling.
we used to have a large setback along 550, but I don't know what happened to that.
Yeah, that I was before my time.
Yeah, we used to have a 125-foot front setback along 550.
This is all for ag zone, right?
Yeah.
Just
A1.
ag, just
Yep.
A1.
So why such large setbacks? I mean, what's the
Well,
rationale for that?
originally, when Trotter Farms was done, you notice the house was sitting back and there's stormwater pond down front and a whole bunch of plantings. That's why we did that, to get the developments back off the road, so that people weren't fronting directly on the street, and it gives you a better sense of ruralness, I guess, is one way to say it.
We're
when you
not,
got-
but was that A1?
Yeah,
Yeah.
So what was the setback for that?
it was 125 feet from the center line at the creation of
Off
the.
of 550?
Yeah. For new lots.
Jesus.
Dave, at some point that got changed to 75.
Yeah, I know it got
Well,
scratched,
that
but.
sounds like a lot too.
Well, it was, but it was access and, not that you couldn't use it, you just had to put landscaping in.
Well, and it was 75 from the center line too.
Yeah.
What we did was we moved it to 60 feet from the edge of the roadway,
But that's
so.
not zoned A1, is it?
It
Trotter
isn't now,
It is
It
now.
was.
it
yeah.
was,
But now it's R1.
It's all
now
right.
it's R1. But we have,
Okay.
obviously, the current situation with the Hallbaker, well, the Maloney, I guess, Hallbaker doesn't front. And then anybody else going on across there, but
Well, and that's,
I'm not gonna kick about it, I'm just raising questions
No, it's-
because I don't understand. If I don't understand, I'm supposed to vote on it, just. So, I think the setbacks are a little high personally. I know when I came to work here years ago, they were 25 feet on the side, and then we got them dropped down to 15. What about if somebody wants to put a shed in their side yard? Is it still 50 feet, or is that limited to 50 feet, no matter what?
It's limited to 50 feet no matter what, unless it's an
No matter what.
agricultural use.
And then it's 100 feet.
And then it's 100 feet if
for
it's
a
an ag
barn or-
building.
let me ask one more question. What is the impetus behind this change?
Just to bring it into line with what a typical agricultural zone would be.
Which means, what's typical?
The 50 feet.
I mean, give me examples of typical.
You mean
Does this
like,
happen everywhere?
I mean, most of the places that I've done
Like
work
throughout
in.
the state or whatever?
Yeah, if you go down to Lancaster and look in those areas of their zoning, it's typically setbacks that are larger.
Does the same go in like the center region, or let's say Blair County or Huntington County? Or
The ones that I know have zoning, a lot of places don't, so there's,
And there's no restriction for agricultural fencing, correct?
we do not have a fencing
Regulation.
regulation.
Do we have an issue that we're trying to address?
No, I think it's more to just bring it into conformance with what other A1 zones would have.
Well, I think there were some things that needed to be cleared up in our RPD
Well, I don't
ordinance.
doubt that.
Yeah, well, a lot of stuff we gotta clean up. And I saw some of that in here when I was looking through it. To say, my only gripe is about the setbacks, but that's not gonna stop me from supporting it, but I think, the nice thing about setbacks is to keep your neighbor at a distance, but I like it to be consistent, if I have a lot, the same setback ought to apply to me as if the farmer next door who was probably there for 200 years before me. So,
Let me ask you a question. What's a setback for a septic system on a residential lot? What's a setback
I can
requirement?
answer that, 10 feet.
It's only 10 feet.
From the edge of the aggregate, not the berm on the mound.
Well, but it's 10 feet.
Yep.
It's not 25 feet, it's not
No.
50 feet.
Mm-hmm.
Because I had a neighbor that put a new septic system in, and that end of that drain field was 6 feet from the property line. And they didn't know it. The builder didn't know it.
Builder didn't know it, probably
Yep.
nobody else knew what the
I
line was.
just told the
either.
neighbor, I said, look, I'm not gonna make a deal out of it, but if I ever have a problem with water, in the yard or in the house, you're gonna have to take care of it. And that's the way I left it with them. But my point is, some setbacks are not much, and that's one of them. Yeah, here we're concerned about setbacks on agricultural property that, we're talking 50-foot setbacks.
Yep. But we don't have the right to amend the sewage setbacks because that's controlled by the state entirely.
Oh, okay.
But I understand.
How is it enforced
I understand
then?
your concern.
Oh, I am concerned, or I was anyhow. I haven't seen any problem yet.
Well, it's a good
Hopefully we
thing.
won't have one.
Hopefully it's sandy enough up there, you won't ever have a
And it
problem.
was not a sand mount, it's a standard septic system.
Yeah.
So,
All right, does anybody from the supervisors have anything else they want to ask before we open the public hearing? Anyone? Okay. What I'm going to do is open the public hearing at 7:30 PM and allow members of the public to come forward and talk about this if they wish to do so. I see we have a large crowd tonight just fired up about this. Anyone? The only thing I'd like to enter officially into the record, and as a supervisor, is that I feel the setbacks are a little bit excessive. I think they should be less, but unless the board feels that way, then it'll probably go through the way it is. That's all I got to add.
What would you propose, Dave?
Personally, I would keep the setback along 550 where it is, because I'm okay with that.
The 60 feet?
Yeah.
and what is proposed?
60 feet.
60 feet.
I'm okay with the front setback on 550, or any public road.
Okay,
Where I have a problem with is the side and rear setbacks, because invariably, somebody will come in and want to put a shed in their yard, and it'll just look like everything's just jammed down into the center. I mean, if you talk about a half-acre lot, you're roughly 150 feet by 150 feet, roughly. So, once you take a 50-foot side setback off, you've only got 50 feet to put your house on it, which means ranch houses are gone in a square configuration. If you do a rectangular configuration, you're gonna have to run it down along the road. I'm not trying to stir up dirt, but I'm just saying, like, Houston Township has 15-foot side setback for residential, agricultural is 30 feet, industrial's 50 feet. Whereas Mark has, I think the biggest side setback they have is 30 feet right now. And I'm not trying to say 30 feet's good or bad, it's up, it's minority of the board wins, but I'm just bringing it up because I know what's gonna happen. Is somebody's gonna come in here and say, well, we wanna build onto the garage, onto the side of the house, can't do it.
well, why would that occur? We're talking about A1.
Yeah,
Right.
but if somebody does an RPD development, which we're going to allow,
Then it gets changed to R1, doesn't it?
No, it doesn't change district.
No. it'll still be in the ag zone.
So if somebody has a house built and they want to put a shed, that shed has to be 50 feet in
Yep,
from their property line.
Yep.
Which does
Or-
essentially put it in the middle of the yard.
yep, yeah. Or if they wanna do a garage addition onto the house, same thing. I'm not trying to push it one way or another, I'm just throwing out questions that I have. And I personally would amend it, but they say,
So do we currently have a mixture of lot sizes in A1? Just not-
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it varies.
I think we're in A1. So if somebody in A1 has less than, has 2 acres and they wanna, they're right near the line, or because their lot, if they just wanna put up a small shed, it has to be 50 feet off the line.
yep. Or if their house
We're looking at a hypothetical.
right,
Okay,
but
what-
what I'm saying is, once the ordinance passes,
Yeah.
even though you're existing, you don't get a waiver for it. Once you pass a zoning ordinance, it's locked in unless it's changed. We as supervisors, you can't come in here and say, hey, this is unfair, can you supervisors waive this? We have no control once the ordinance is adopted. It's locked in.
Do we have any idea of the
You
impact?
can't get a variance because you can't create your own hardship under the law.
You can apply for one, but that's one of the biggest questions would be, you're
And-
creating
and-
your
And I
own.
assume that legal counsel for the zoning hearing board would tell them that no.
So if we change the setbacks and somebody already has
If it's
structure?
pre-existing, that's just would be a non-conformity in the zoning district.
Right, they're not gonna make you tear the building down. But if you wanted to add on to that building or make a change to that building, then you're probably not gonna be able to do much with it. I'm just throwing it out there.
So the front and sides are currently what?
The front right now is 75 from off of 550. It is 45 from collector and arterial streets, and then 35 from local. The side for single-family dwelling is 15. Agriculture is 65 right now. And the rear is 15 as well, with the agricultural uses being 65.
What are the ones, it seems like, I know you don't like to have a bunch of different ones, but it seems like the side and the rear, because if you were gonna add on or
Yeah,
put a
typically that would
shed or
be side or
something,
rear.
the side or the rear, does seem excessive if you're talking about now smaller lots and somebody wants to add on to their house or put a shed in.
Well, again, what's the smaller lots that we're talking? I keep hearing
The
smaller
smaller
lots.
lot, the smallest lot allowed in A1 is 1
1
acre.
acre.
But you would be,
But this is a half acre.
if it
Well,
was an
no.
RPD, you could get down to a half an
RPD, you
acre.
could go down to a half acre, but that's a special, I should say conventional lot is 1 acre right now.
Okay, so again, I go back to my question, what's the impetus behind this change? And you're saying to conform with general specifications for this, across the Commonwealth, let's say.
Well, typically your A1 districts are larger lots. I mean, you're dealing with agricultural lots that are,
Right.
just
Okay.
larger in general, so you would have larger setbacks. But again, it's up to the purview of the board how you guys want to interpret
But,
that.
and that's why they have this ag structures, they should be
Yeah,
further off.
we have an actual
Keep the
setback
flies
for ag
back.
structure.
Yeah.
That's further than the restriction we have.
Okay, well,
Yeah, I mean, I do say that I have an issue with the side and the rear. I certainly have seen that in Ferguson Township where somebody wants to put a shed in it, and literally that's in the middle of their backyard.
Mhm.
It's ridiculous. I'm not a big fan of that. So what's the thinking behind going from 15 to 50? Like, whoever put this together?
I wasn't
what's-
involved in the
for-
beginning stages of that.
Originally, the setback was 25 feet, and when the last revision was done, I think there was a mistake, and it was put in as 15. So originally, it should have been a 25 side and rear setback.
and what are we
not
making it now?
15.
Or would we make it
It's going to be,
This is 50 and
75,
75 in the
yeah.
proposed.
Yeah.
instead
75 for the
of
rear.
15 and
15.
But we could go
Well,
somewhere in between,
you-
like
Right.
where
yeah,
it was
you could-
25 or 30
you
seems
could.
more realistic to me.
I mean, that's a huge change to go from
Mhm.
15
Well, yeah.
to 50 or 75, so I would be in favor of bringing it back to 15 or 20.
but
I mean, I guess the reason is so that people don't build right on top of their neighbor, whether it's a house or a
Right,
garage or a
whatever it is,
shed.
yep.
Like, I get that, but I also,
it also depends on what they're building too. If they're building a shed, it doesn't have water and sewage and
Right.
all
But
this.
this
Warriors
would- but
Mark
this would
has
be
an
for
exemption
houses
in
too,
one of the
though.
zones.
Because that
for
becomes a
sheds.
problem, I think, if you don't have a proper setback for certain types of structures. Okay, manure pits, or
That would be 100-foot minimum.
that'd be 100%.
you have to have setbacks
Yeah,
for
that
this
would be-
stuff.
Right.
So, but I don't understand how we got,
So
how,
this, we're talking specifically houses, garages, sheds.
how do we get from 15 to what?
To 50.
And 25 to
Well, it's 15 right now.
15 to
15 for
50?
side and
15
rear.
It went from 15 to 50 for the side and 15 to 75 for the rear.
That's a significant difference. The rear is so much, not so much, but I don't understand why 50 isn't sufficient there. And then on the other ones, you went from 15 to 50. I mean, why wouldn't we, what is the risk of
Well,
not
15
leaving it
seems-
at 15?
15 is pretty close though for a house. if
Yeah.
you're talking a house.
I mean, I think it was.
Well,
but
the
I-
houses
It was
would be
supposed to
actually 30
25,
feet.
thir-
It'd be the closest they could be, because each lot is gonna have its own setback.
A house has a set of setbacks, right?
Yeah,
Right.
and that's the way it's broken down, the one right now.
You
We
don't put a
actually
house
call
15
out
feet.
single-family dwelling,
Uh-huh.
and that's 15 feet, which again, I think was a mistake, should have been 25.
Okay. Well, can we have a compromise between 15 and 50?
What I was gonna suggest, I mean, so we're still in a public hearing, but
Yeah, we're not 30.
what I'm suggesting is 30 feet, in my opinion, would be a justifiable thing for a setback on a rural ag lot, and change the rear to 30 feet also. And that way you can put your shed out in the backyard, and you can still have room for a
Yeah.
volleyball court between your house and the woods, or whatever you want to do. Some privacy in your own backyard.
Is there an agreement on the 100 feet for the ag structures?
I personally don't have a problem with that.
Because
I know a lot of farmers would disagree, but it might be good to keep them back from the,
Now, the setback from property lines,
It should be noted too that for the manure storage, that's actually in the exemptions for agricultural use. That's 300 feet for manure
Yeah.
storage, not 100. That's
Yeah.
just for an ag structure, so
but a
or
barn,
something
a
like
chicken
that.
coop, that would be 100 feet.
Nope.
Yeah, or do we have something that's not right on that thing?
The
No, I'm just, it's, the
storage
exception
or
is
newborn
or
construction.
newborn construction
Yeah,
is
so that's
not-
the
is
table need to be
300 feet.
updated.
so that one change, I think, those two are the two that we discussed, 30 feet, side and back.
Side and rear.
That ought to be sufficient, right,
I would think it would be
to
personally.
meet all the concerns?
Which, are we doing, you said front, side, and back.
No, I didn't say front
Oh,
side.
you didn't? You
No.
just said side and back.
I just said side and rear. I think the setbacks in front, it's important that they're larger because of the utility, because of vehicles traveling at high speed. They run off the road, give them some room to get stopped before they go through your living room. I've seen that happen all too close, the neighbors, not out here, but when I lived in another community.
Right.
So it's good to have that buffer in your front yard.
And that's 75 feet.
Well, no, that's 50
50
feet
feet.
from the front property line.
And
All right.
but then 60 feet off if it's 550.
Yeah,
50
it's
feet.
wider on
That's
550
fine.
because it's a higher speed road.
I think that's okay.
Oh, okay.
And then you're talking 30 feet side and rear, and then leave the agricultural stuff alone. I think that manure storage at 300 feet was that way back in the late 80s.
Yeah, that was a carryover.
Yeah,
too.
yeah, and that won't change. That would be identical. So, but we can, if we got more discussion to do while the hearing's open, we can do that. I don't have anything else that I have an issue with, I'm good with the rest of it, so.
I don't have anything else. Can we do it with those,
We can make those amendments at the
Amendments.
meeting, yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Beck, do you have anything to add?
Nope.
Good, bad, or ugly? Okay. Anybody in the public have anything else to add after all this great discussion?
I think this discussion does sound reasonable. Make the changes.
Okay. All right, well, hearing nothing else, I'm going to close the public hearing at 7:43 PM and resume the regular supervisors meeting. Next up on our agenda, is there a motion to adopt or amend and adopt the proposed changes to the rural R1 district, I guess, in rural pres,
A1?
or A1, sorry.
RPD.
Looking at the wrong page.
RPD and A1.
Yeah. I'll make a motion if nobody else is going to. I would move to adopt the ordinance with the exception of changing the setbacks for the rear to 30 feet and the side to 30 feet. And leave the agricultural setbacks being 100 feet for the side for the agricultural structures. And I guess it's not, I don't see it in there, but 300 feet for a manure pit.
It's in the, yeah.
Okay, it's in the other ordinance.
All the exceptions.
Yep. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Moving second. Any discussion by the board? Hearing none, I'm going to call for the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Approved. Thank you all. Hopefully we all made the right decision. Yep. If we hear about it tomorrow, we'll know. Township reports. Does any of the staff have anything else they'd like to add? Take away? Any concerns? Hearing none. Authority committee reports, anybody have anything they would like to add to that? Hearing none. Got a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Meeting adjourned at 7:45 PM.